It is a weariness that sleep does not seem to cure, a psychic weight that a weekend of rest cannot lift. It settles deep in the bones, a quiet hum of exhaustion that persists even when our days are not filled with hard physical labor. We live in an age of unprecedented convenience, surrounded by tools designed to save us effort and time, yet we feel more drained than ever. This is the great paradox of modern life. Our bodies are at rest, but our minds are in a state of perpetual motion, and so we must begin by asking a fundamental question, a question that will guide our entire journey tonight. What if this profound exhaustion comes not from what we do, but from what we carry? What if the true source of our fatigue is not the sum of our actions, but the weight of our worries? We are carrying the crushing weight of other people's opinions, the relentless noise of the world. We are dragging an unseen anchor across a dry and barren landscape. This feeling of being drained, this constant low-grade depletion, is not the illness itself. It is a symptom. It is a fever that signals a deeper imbalance. The true ailment is a fundamental miscalculation in how we allocate our most precious and finite resource, our attention. We have been taught, by culture and by instinct, to point the lens of our focus outward, to scan the horizon for threats and opportunities, to monitor the shifting moods of those around us. But in doing so, we have neglected the one domain where our power is absolute, the one kingdom where we are the sole sovereign. The journey we are embarking on is one of reclamation. It is about learning to identify the invisible burdens we have been carrying and finding the courage to set them down. It is about understanding that true strength is not found in the ability to carry a heavier load, but in the wisdom to know what is yours to carry and what must be left behind. It is a journey of subtraction, of letting go, of returning to a state of quiet, focused power. It is about discovering that the peace in the silent, unshakable center of your own being. Let us paint a picture of a reality that may feel intimately familiar. It is a life lived in a state of constant, low-grade reaction. The day begins not with intention, but with the jarring chime of a notification. The mood for the morning is set not by a conscious choice, but by an email, a news headline, or a comment left on a social media post. This is a life conducted like a leaf in the wind, tossed about by the unpredictable currents of the external world. A traffic jam incites anger. A colleague's bad mood creates anxiety. The stock market's dip induces a feeling of panic. The praise of a superior brings a fleeting moment of relief. In this state, our inner world is not our own. It is a mirror reflecting the chaotic symphony of external events. This experience has a name in the field of psychology. It is called having an external locus of control, developed by psychologist Julian Rotter in the 1950s. This concept describes the belief that our lives are not shaped by our own efforts or decisions, but are instead governed by outside forces, by luck, by fate, by circumstances, or by the actions of powerful others. When we live from this place, we attribute our successes to good fortune and our failures to bad luck or the faults of others. We become passive observers of our own existence, convinced that the levers of control are somewhere outside of ourselves. The ancient Stoics warned of this very state of being nearly 2,000 years ago. They taught that if we fail to distinguish between what is ours and what is not, we are destined to a life of lament, of being disturbed, and of finding fault. With both gods and men, it is crucial to understand that this is not a personal failing. It is a systemic condition, a psychological posture that is actively cultivated and amplified by the architecture of our modern world. Every notification, every like, every breaking news alert is designed to pull our focus outward, to train us to react. The entire digital ecosystem is a vast and sophisticated engine for externalizing our locus of control. It conditions us to seek validation from outside, to measure our worth by external metrics, and to believe that our emotional state is contingent on the ever-shifting landscape of information and social feedback. We are marinated in a culture that encourages what the existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith. The refusal to accept our own freedom and responsibility, the comforting but ultimately disempowering retreat into the role of the victim. Over time, this constant outsourcing of our emotional well-being has a profound and corrosive effect. It creates a state of learned helplessness. This is more than just a passive belief. It is an actively trained neurological and psychological pattern. With each instance that we blame an external event for our internal state, we are running repetition, strengthening the neural pathways that tell us we are powerless. We are teaching ourselves again and again that our own agency is irrelevant. This is the true nature of the symphony of chaos. It is not just noisy and distracting. It is a training ground. It is an environment that systematically erodes our belief in our own capacity to influence our lives, leaving us feeling like a marionette whose strings are pulled by 1,000 invisible hands. Exhausted by the motion, but in command of none of it, this is the hidden cost of living at the mercy of the world. And it is from this state of learned powerlessness that we must begin our ascent. The exhaustion we feel from a day spent worrying is not an illusion. It is not all in your head in the dismissive sense of the phrase. It is a real, measurable, biological event. To understand why, we must venture into the inner cosmos of the brain and explore one of its most fascinating and energy-hungry networks. While our brain as a whole makes up only about 2% of our body weight, it consumes a staggering 20% of our body's total energy, a testament to its incredible processing power. And a huge portion of that energy is consumed not when we are solving a complex problem, but when we are doing nothing at all. Neuroscientists have identified a large-scale brain network known as the default mode network, or DMN. This network, which includes regions like the medial prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex, becomes most active when we are at wakeful rest, when our minds are wandering, daydreaming, recalling memories, or thinking about ourselves and others. This is the brain's baseline state, its internal monologue, and this baseline is extraordinarily expensive. Research indicates that the DMN alone can account for 60% to 80% of the brain's total energy consumption at rest. To put that into perspective, the total energy your brain uses in a day is more than 100 times what a typical smartphone requires. The DMN is like a powerful engine, always idling at an incredibly high RPM, burning vast quantities of metabolic fuel in the form of glucose and oxygen. Now, let us connect this neurological fact to a psychological experience. When we worry, especially about things we cannot control, we are engaging in a specific pattern of thought known as rumination. Rumination is defined as repetitive, recursive, and uncontrollable thinking, typically focused on one's negative mood and its causes. When you find yourself caught in a loop, replaying a past mistake, or anxiously simulating a future catastrophe, you are ruminating. And this psychological act of rumination is the behavioral expression of a hyperactive default mode network. You are pushing the brain's already expensive idle state into overdrive. The feeling of being utterly drained after a period of intense anxiety is the literal physical result of your DMN consuming a disproportionate share of your body's energy budget, all for no productive output. But the cost is not just measured in wasted energy. Rumination exacts a heavy cognitive tax. This relentless self-referential thinking creates a significant cognitive load, consuming the very mental resources needed for focused, goal-directed behavior. Executive functions, such as attentional control, cognitive flexibility, and the inhibition of irrelevant information are all managed by the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center. Rumination overloads these systems. It acts like a demanding background application on a computer, slowing down every other process. This is why it is so difficult to concentrate when you are worried, or why you feel mentally scattered when you are anxious. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a battle for limited neural resources. The very act of worrying about things you cannot control makes you measurably less effective at dealing with the things you can. You are paying a high price in both energy and clarity, all for the privilege of focusing on that which is, by definition, beyond your influence. We have journeyed through the fog of modern exhaustion and seen its roots in a mind turned outward, lost in a symphony of chaos. We have quantified its cost in the currency of neural energy. And now we arrive at a crossroads, a fork in the road. This is the pivotal moment, the aha, that changes everything. It is the discovery of a principle so simple it can be stated in a single sentence, yet so profound it can reshape a life. It is a key that has been passed down through millennia, waiting to be turned. Nearly 2,000 years ago, in a Roman Empire rife with uncertainty. A former slave-turned-revered philosopher named Epictetus offered his students a powerful tool for navigating the chaos of life. He opened his handbook, the Enchiridion, with this foundational idea: some things are in our control and others not. This is the Stoic dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that we must learn to meticulously separate all of life's concerns into two distinct categories. In the first category are the things not in our control: our bodies, our property, our reputation, the actions of others, the past, the future, and the outcomes of our efforts. In the second, much smaller but infinitely more important category, are the things that are entirely within our control: our opinions and judgments, our intentions and motivations, our desires and aversions, in a word, our own actions and our own will. The Stoic path to peace, strength, and freedom, he argued, is to focus every ounce of our energy on the second category and to practice a calm acceptance of the first. Now, let us leap forward in time, from the stone porticos of ancient Rome to the university laboratories of the mid-20th century. Here, a psychologist named Julian Rotter, studying human behavior, developed a theory he called the locus of control. Rotter observed that people could be placed on a continuum. On one end were those with an external locus of control, who believed their lives were shaped by outside forces. On the other end were those with an internal locus of control, who believed their lives were primarily the result of their own efforts, choices, and personal decisions. His research consistently found that individuals with a more internal locus of control were more achievement-oriented, better able to cope with stress, and experienced greater well-being. Herein lies the profound revelation. These are not two different ideas, they are two independent discoveries of the same fundamental law of human agency. Epictetus, through introspection and philosophical reasoning, and Rotter, through empirical scientific research, arrived at the exact same conclusion. From opposite ends of history. This is not just an old philosophy or a modern theory. It is a deep, verifiable truth about the human condition. It is the understanding that our power does not lie in commanding the world, but in commanding ourselves. This principle is not an invitation to passivity. It is the ultimate strategy for effectiveness. Imagine an army trying to defend an entire continent. Its forces would be spread thin, weak, and ineffective. But if that army were to withdraw its forces from the vast, indefensible territories and concentrate them entirely within an impregnable fortress, its power would become absolute within those walls. This is the strategic genius of the dichotomy of control. By deliberately withdrawing our precious mental and emotional energy from the things we cannot influence, we are not giving up. We are concentrating our entire force onto the small, critical territory where we have total command. Our next thought, our present effort, our chosen response. We stop fighting the storm and focus all our skill on steering the ship. This is the fork in the road. It is the choice to stop wrestling with the uncontrollable and to start mastering the controllable. It is the choice to let go of the anchor and finally walk free. The fork in the road is a philosophical choice, but the journey down the path of control is a biological one. To truly understand how to master our inner world, we must understand the physical architecture of the mind that governs it. Our brains are equipped with a dual system for processing the world, a constant interplay between immediate, raw emotion and considered cognitive thought. Lobes of our brain lies a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala is part of the limbic system, the brain's ancient emotional core. It acts as a rapid response threat detector, constantly scanning our environment for anything that might be dangerous or emotionally significant. When it perceives a threat, a sudden loud noise, an angry face, a distressing piece of news, it triggers the body's fight or flight response in an instant. It is the source of our impulsive reactions. However, we are not merely slaves to this ancient alarm system. The human brain's great evolutionary triumph is the development of the prefrontal cortex, or PFC, the large region at the very front of our brain responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control. The PFC exercises top-down regulation over the more primitive parts of the brain. It can receive the alarm signal from the amygdala And instead of reacting blindly, it can assess the situation, consider the consequences, and choose a more deliberate response. A stimulus to alter its emotional impact is known in neuroscience as cognitive reappraisal. Here, we find the neurological basis of our entire philosophy. The prefrontal cortex is the physical seat of your locus of control. The Stoic dichotomy is not just a mental exercise, it is a willful act of neural regulation. Amygdala might fire instantly, flooding you with anger. The choice to take a deep breath and reframe the situation, this is outside of my control, signals down to your amygdala, calming the emotional storm. You are using the most advanced part of your brain to consciously regulate the more primitive parts. You are engaging in the physical act of self-mastery. Crucially, this is not a fixed system. The neural pathways that connect the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger and more efficient they become. Every time you consciously practice reappraisal, every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you choose to focus on your response rather than the stimulus, you are performing a mental repetition. You are strengthening that top-down regulatory pathway. This is why emotional resilience is not an innate trait you are either born with or not. It is a trainable skill. It is the result of consistent practice of building the neurological architecture that supports a calm, centered, and internally driven life. You are, quite literally, wiring your brain for peace. Theory is the map, but practice is the journey. We have explored the philosophy and the neuroscience of control, and now we must take our first steps. We need tangible, accessible tools that can be used in the heat of the moment to shift us from a state of reaction to one of response. We will begin with two of the most powerful levers available, the breath and the pen. The first lever is your own breath. Your autonomic nervous system, or ANS, governs all the involuntary processes of your body, your heartbeat, your digestion, your stress response. It has two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight-or-flight accelerator, preparing you for action by increasing heart rate and releasing stress hormones like adrenaline. The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest brake, promoting calmness, recovery, and conservation of energy. For most of us living in the modern world, the accelerator is stuck on, but here's the secret. While you cannot consciously command your heart to slow down, you can consciously command your breath. And your breath is the master control switch for the entire system. Slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing is a direct signal to your brain to apply the parasympathetic brake. When you intentionally slow your breathing, you activate the vagus nerve, the main highway of the parasympathetic system, which in turn lowers your heart rate and reduces the production of stress hormones. This is not a placebo effect. It is a direct physiological intervention. Techniques like box breathing, inhaling for a count of 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4 are used by military personnel and elite athletes. To stabilize the nervous system under extreme pressure, your breath is the bridge between your conscious will and your unconscious physiology. It is the most immediate physical proof that you possess a sphere of control, a lever you can pull at any moment to bring your body back to a state of equilibrium. The second lever is the pen. If the breath is for immediate, in-a-moment regulation, then journaling is for long-term cognitive training. It is the gymnasium where you build the mental muscles of control. The practice is simple yet profound. Each day, or whenever you feel overwhelmed, take a piece of paper and write down the situation that is causing you distress. Then, as the Stoics advised, draw a line down the middle of the page. On one side, list every aspect of the situation that is outside of your control. On the other, list every aspect that is within your control. This simple act is far more than mere record-keeping. It is a form of cognitive rehearsal. It is a structured reappraisal exercise that trains your prefrontal cortex in a calm, low-stakes environment. By externalizing your thoughts onto the page, you force clarity upon the chaos. You are methodically untangling the knot of worry, separating the threads of the uncontrollable from the threads of the controllable. You are creating a flight simulator for your mind, practicing the crucial mental move of shifting your focus before you are in the midst of an emotional storm. This practice, done consistently, rewires your default response. It makes the act of separating what you can and cannot control second nature. So that when life inevitably presents you with a real crisis, your mind knows exactly what to do. The breath is your anchor in the present moment. The pen is the architect of your future peace. As we walk this path of self-mastery, we inevitably encounter its greatest obstacle. It is not an external force, but an internal resistance. It is the profound difficulty of accepting the full weight of our own freedom. The 20th century French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre built his existentialist philosophy on a radical premise. Existence precedes essence. Unlike a paper knife, which is designed with a purpose before it is created, a human being is born into the world as nothing. We simply exist first. It is through our choices, our actions, and our commitments that we create our own essence, our own definition. There is no preordained plan, no human nature to fall back on. We are, in his famous words, condemned to be free. This freedom is absolute, but it comes with a terrifying consequence: total responsibility. If we are the sole architects of our lives, then we can no longer retreat into the comfort of blame or the excuse of circumstance. Our failures are entirely our own. This realization, Sartre argued, leads to a feeling of profound anguish. This is the psychological price of a fully internal locus of control. It is the moment you truly accept that you are in the driver's seat, and you alone are responsible for where the vehicle goes. The fear of this burden is often what keeps us clinging to an external locus of control, because the role of the victim, while disempowering, is free from the crushing weight of accountability. This is a timeless human question, a paradox that thinkers for millennia have wrestled with. How do we bear the responsibility of our own agency in a world we fundamentally do not control? The answer to this Western existential dilemma may be found in the wisdom of the East. If Sartre articulated the problem, it is Buddhist philosophy that provides the practical solution through the principle of non-attachment. It is one of the most misunderstood concepts of Eastern thought. It does not mean indifference, coldness, or a lack of caring. It is not about avoiding relationships or possessions. Non-attachment is the practice of letting go of our fixation on impermanent things, and most importantly, on outcomes. The Buddha taught that attachment, the clinging to things we want, and the aversion to things we don't, is the root of all suffering, because all things are, by their nature, impermanent. Here is the beautiful synthesis of these two great traditions. Sartre shows us we are condemned to be free, responsible for our choices. Buddhism shows us how to bear that responsibility without being crushed by it. The key is to detach our sense of well-being from the results of our choices, which are in the realm of the uncontrollable, and attach it instead to the quality of our choices and efforts, which are in the realm of the controllable. You can be fully responsible for preparing for the interview with diligence and integrity, while being non-attached to whether you get the job. You can love another person with your whole heart, while being non-attached to whether they love you. Back loving them in a way that allows them to be free. This is the art of focusing on the process, not the prize. It resolves the anguish of freedom by allowing you to take complete ownership of your actions while surrendering the results to the larger flow of life. It is the discovery that you can be both the dedicated captain of your ship and a humble servant of the sea. We have found the philosophy and the tools, but how do we make this new way of being our default state? How do we move from conscious, effortful control to an automatic, ingrained state of inner peace and strength? The answer lies in one of the most misunderstood but powerful virtues, discipline. And the mechanism behind it lies deep within the brain's ancient centers of action. When you first learn a new skill, like driving a car, it requires immense conscious effort. Your prefrontal cortex is working overtime, thinking about every turn of the wheel, every press of the pedal. But with practice, something magical happens. The actions become smooth, automatic, second nature. You can drive while holding a conversation or listening to music. This transition from conscious effort to automatic habit is mediated by a group of structures deep in the brain called the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia are responsible for procedural learning and habit formation. With enough repetition, they take over the task from the energy-intensive prefrontal cortex, encoding the behavior into a low-energy automatic loop. Here is the critical insight. Discipline is the act of intentionally programming your own basal ganglia. It is a form of conscious self-wiring. Every time you choose the harder, more virtuous path over the easier, more reactive one, you are sending a deliberate signal from your PFC to your basal ganglia. When you wake up, the moment your alarm rings, instead of hitting snooze, when you respond to criticism with a calm question, instead of a defensive remark, when you sit down to do your work, instead of aimlessly scrolling, each of these is a single repetition. You are actively carving the neural pathways for a new, better set of automatic behaviors. You are not merely being disciplined in a moralistic sense. You are acting as the neural architect of your future self, laying down the foundation of a citadel of positive habits, one stone at a time. This leads us to a profound paradox. True freedom is not the absence of rules, but the result of self-imposed structure. The person who lacks discipline believes they are free, but in reality, they are a slave to every passing impulse, every shifting mood, every external distraction. Their conscious mind is constantly hijacked by the need to manage the trivial, leaving no energy for the significant. The disciplined person, in contrast, builds a fortress of reliable habits. By automating the fundamentals of their morning routine, their response to stress, their work ethic, they liberate their conscious mind. Their prefrontal cortex is freed from the bog of moment-to-moment decisions and can be directed toward higher-level goals, creative pursuits, and deep, meaningful connection. Discipline is the scaffolding that allows true freedom to be built. It is the consistent, daily practice that transforms the philosophy of control from a nice idea into a lived reality. Lasting change does not happen in a single, dramatic moment of insight. It is the slow, steady, cumulative result of thousands of small, disciplined choices. It is the patient, daily work of building the inner citadel that will serve as your unshakable sanctuary in the face of life's inevitable storms. This is how discipline becomes freedom. We have built the citadel and learned to command our inner world. But what is this strength for? Life will inevitably test our foundations. It will send storms, hardships, and tragedies that we cannot control. The ultimate promise of this philosophy is not that we can avoid these events, but that we can change our relationship to them. It is about moving beyond mere survival and into the realm of profound transformation. In psychology, there are two crucial concepts for understanding our response to adversity. The first is resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from difficult experiences, to endure stress and hardship without lasting psychological damage. It is the capacity to maintain or regain mental health despite facing significant risk. Resilience is the strength of the citadel, its ability to withstand the siege. But there is another, more profound possibility. It is called post-traumatic growth, or PTG, coined by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. PTG refers to the positive psychological changes experienced as a result of a struggle with a major life crisis. This is not just bouncing back, it is bouncing for individuals who experience PTG report a greater appreciation for life, a shift in their priorities, warmer and more intimate relationships, a greater sense of personal strength, and the recognition of new possibilities for their lives. They are not just unbroken, they are remade, forged in the fire of their struggle. Here is the critical link. Focusing on what you can control is the catalyst that transforms the potential for trauma into the reality of growth. The adverse event itself does not determine the outcome. The same fire that melts butter hardens steel. The difference lies in the response. When faced with a crisis, the person with an external locus of control sees only the uncontrollable event and feels like a victim. The person who has practiced the dichotomy of control understands that while the event is not their choice, their response is. They can focus on the controllable elements, the meaning they assign to the event, the perspective they choose to adopt, the actions they take in the aftermath. This active engagement is the struggle that PTG is built upon. It is the work of cognitive reorganization, of taking the shattered pieces of one's worldview and reassembling them into something stronger and more beautiful. Like the Japanese art of kintsugi, the relationship between resilience and post-traumatic growth is a subject of ongoing academic debate. The connections can be complex and, at times, equivocal. Some research even suggests that, in certain situations, Very high levels of resilience might be associated with lower PTG, perhaps because the highly resilient individual is less shaken by the event and therefore undergoes less of the deep, transformative revaluation that leads to growth. But for our journey, the path is clear. Resilience is the foundation, but growth is the ultimate objective. The goal is not simply to be the person who can endure the storm without breaking. The goal is to become the person who is wiser, more compassionate, and more deeply connected to life because they have weathered the storm. It is to understand that our deepest wounds can become the source of our greatest strengths. It is to accept that failure is not the opposite of success, but an integral part of the process of growth, valuable feedback on the path to mastery. This is the final alchemy, turning the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom, all by focusing your power where it has always belonged on the choices that are yours, and yours alone, to make. Our journey tonight has taken us from the shores of ancient Greece to the frontiers of modern neuroscience, from the existential cafes of Paris to the quiet monasteries of the East. We began with a feeling, a pervasive, modern we have traced it to its source. A mind focused on the uncontrollable, a will entangled in the chaos of the external world. We have discovered that the path to reclaiming our energy, our peace, and our power lies in a simple, profound shift of focus. It is the practice of drawing a clear line in the sand of our experience, separating the vast ocean of what we cannot control from the small, solid ground of what we can. This practice is not a destination at which you one day arrive. There is no final graduation, no moment where the work is complete. It is, instead, a continuous, lifelong process of returning. Life will never stop producing storms. The world will never cease to be unpredictable. You will inevitably be knocked off center, pulled back into worry, and tempted by the illusion that you can command the wind and the waves. The mastery of this art is not measured by an ability to achieve a permanent state of perfect, unshakable calm. It is measured by something far more gentle and realistic. The ability to shorten your recovery time. It is the skill of recognizing more and more quickly when your focus has drifted into the turbulent waters of the uncontrollable. And then gently, skillfully, and without self-judgment, guiding your attention back to the quiet harbor of your own thoughts, your own efforts, and your own choices. The ultimate freedom this practice offers is a quiet indifference to praise or blame. When your sense of worth is no longer tied to the outcomes you cannot command or the opinions you cannot control, it becomes rooted in something unshakable. It becomes anchored in the integrity of your own efforts and the quality of your own character. The judgments of the world, both positive and negative, become mere data. Information to be considered, but never the source of your core identity. This is the quiet harbor. It is an inner peace that is not contingent on a peaceful world. It is a strength that is not dependent on the absence of adversity. It is the realization that you have within you a sanctuary that no external event can ever breach. It is the quiet, profound, and liberating power that comes from finally, truly becoming the master of your own inner kingdom. And so, as our time together this evening comes to a close, let us not see this as an end, but as a beginning. The path is now clear. The tools are in your hands. The first step is simply the next conscious breath, the next deliberate choice. It is the quiet decision, in this very moment, to let go of the anchor and to begin the steady, patient walk toward freedom. The night has grown deep around us, and a quiet stillness has settled in. Let the ideas we have explored tonight dissolve now, not into memory, but into feeling. Feel the immense weight of the world you have been carrying, and grant yourself permission, just for this moment, to set it down at your feet. There is nothing you need to solve or figure out right now. The endless list of tasks, the worries about tomorrow, the echoes of yesterday, let them all recede into the gentle darkness. They are clouds passing in a vast and silent sky, and you are the sky, not the clouds. Your true nature is not the turbulence of thought, but the quiet, open space in which all thoughts arise and pass away. Rest in that space. It is your birthright. It is the unshakable ground of your being. This peace is not something you must earn or achieve. It is something you must simply return to. It has been here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise. So, let your breath be slow and easy. Let your body grow heavy and soft. There is nowhere to go, and nothing to do but to be here now in this quiet harbor of the present moment. Let the gentle tide of sleep pull you out into the deep healing waters of rest. Good night.